What's going on, everybody? Perry here next to me. We went to go see The Invisible Man, which is produced by Outhouse Productions. Oh, I'm sorry. I mean Blumhouse Productions. Perry's joke, by the way. I totally just stole that from him.
I stole that from Mike from Red Letter Media.
Oh, did you really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, fuck. This is produced by Blumhouse Productions, and it's written and directed by Lee Whannell, who also wrote and directed Upgrade, right?
I don't know if he wrote Upgrade. I know he directed it.
Upgrade. Okay. So just gonna be up front. I was not really anticipating this movie at all. I really didn't have any desire to see it. It's just one of those things where it's kind of like, fuck it, might as well. It has a lot of hype around it. It's getting a lot of positive reviews, so why not watch it and just kind of give my take on it. Right out of the gate, I have a few positive things to say about this movie, but honestly, it's mostly negative. But let me start out with the positives. One thing that I did enjoy about this film was I thought that it built suspense really well. I thought for the most part, like for the actual suspenseful moments of the film, I think it did a pretty decent job at really making me feel that suspense throughout the scene. And it's not the easiest thing to do, so like I felt immersed into those moments, and I appreciated for those moments. Even though I will say, I feel like for some scenes, I think it actually dragged it on for a bit too long.
Yeah.
There was times where, like, okay, I'm trying to feel suspense, but it just it went on for too long to the point where I was getting a little bored of it, and I kind of wanted whatever was supposed to happen just to happen already. And, I like slow burn stuff, it's fine, but it's not doing enough to really keep me engaged throughout the suspense sometimes. It just felt like it was purposely trying to draw out for just a bit too long. But anyway, I said I was going to stick to positives, so let me stick to positives. I also like how it does center around it centers around a topic that's fairly important. Like, I think, traumatic spousal abuse is a really important topic, and I think that, I appreciate that it's trying to center its thematic relevance around an important topic like that. And honestly, I think that's probably a big reason why this film's getting a lot of positive reviews. It's just because of that aspect of the film. But there were quite a bit of things about this film that I did not like. And honestly, when it comes to the plot holes and plot conveniences, it was just way too obvious for me to just let slide, because usually I'm not somebody who really cares too much about those types of things when it comes to filmmaking. Usually I can give those things a pass, but this film relies heavily on those kind of plot elements as the film goes along, and it's kind of hard to ignore those things when I'm watching it, especially since the ending relies a lot on a certain aspect of the film that I just found really unbelievable. And it's not believable, and it's also predictable at the same time, which made it really underwhelming. And I don't know if this is a horror movie. Is this labeled as a horror?
It's like a horror science fiction film.
Because this didn't feel like a horror. This felt more like a science fiction action movie than anything. Mm-hmm. Maybe a science fiction action thriller, maybe. I didn't feel much horror because, yeah, there's suspense in it. But the only horror in this was just the incredibly loud noise jump scares that just were so unnecessary.
Yeah.
There was 4 or 5 really loud noise jump scares in this movie that were just so annoying because it didn't do anything for the atmosphere. It didn't do anything to really set anything psychological with the tone. It was just there because it's just there to fucking, let's hope that the fucking people here that came to watch this movie will be impressed because they get to jump up for a second. But it doesn't do anything for the film. It's just there to give you a cheap scare, and I kind of hated that.
Yeah, it really pissed me off every time that happened. A character would, not to get into spoilers or anything, but a character would just kick a dog bowl, and then you would hear a really loud
oh my God,
noise.
I hated that.
It was And that was like in the first like 10, 15
Yeah.
minutes of the movie.
And it's so loud and unnecessary. Like, again, like that's the part that I hate the most about it, is that it's incredibly loud and it doesn't really serve any purpose for what it's going for in terms of like the atmosphere. It's just there. It's just there. And that was really, really aggravating for me. And yeah, like there was just so many things about this film that really dragged down the quality for me. And a lot of it just has to do with, I feel like, some of the plot just either having too many conveniences or just not making enough sense and being really predictable on top of it. And also, it just goes on for too long too.
Yeah.
Like, it hits a point where I'm like, okay, like, honestly, I thought the film was gonna be over. And I was like, oh, okay, cool, it's finally winding down. And it's like, oh, we have another like 20 minutes because it tries to throw a curveball at you that I just wasn't interested in. I didn't care enough about what was happening to stick around for another 20 minutes about this new twist that it was throwing at me. And yeah, I don't know, I don't know, for me personally, it just didn't do enough to really captivate my attention. And honestly, like, throughout most of the film, I was like, okay, like, this is at least average. But like, by the end of it, like, I can't say that this is even average. I think this is just a little bit below average, to be honest. I mean, what's the main actress's name?
Elizabeth Moss.
Yeah, she's from The Handmaid's Tale.
Right, and Mad Men.
And Mad Men. She was pretty good in this movie. You know, I'm not gonna like dog her performance or anything, but she was pretty good in this film. I feel like maybe, you know, in some parts she wasn't super convincing, but like, honestly, like, her performance was like the least thing I was worried about when I was watching this movie. Yeah, and she was probably the strongest actress in this movie because everybody else like came off fairly weak. I don't know if it's the actor's fault or just the writing, because like the writing was also pretty bad for certain parts in terms of the dialogue.
Yeah.
It just wasn't very convincing. It sounded like scripted dialogue, and it really turned me off. And yeah, like, that's really most of what I have to say. I mean, again, like, there are, like, in terms of suspense building, I thought it was pretty effective for the most part, but yeah, there was just a lot of aspects of this film that was really keeping me from truly enjoying it. And yeah, did you want to throw anything with that, Perry?
Yeah, there was a lot of cheesy dialogue, especially in the first act. And it's like, I get what they're doing. I get they're trying to build character, but it just was not working. Like, I didn't really feel like really invested in any of the character. Even Elizabeth Moss is like, you know, obviously her being the main character, I wasn't even that invested in, you know, her and watching the story unfold, because like, I feel like the first act was, I don't know, I'd say the first act was probably the weakest part of the movie.
I could see that.
Because it just jumps right into it with like no context or anything, and it comes off really like clunky, like we missed almost like the first 10-15 minutes of the movie was just cut out, and then it just jumps to one scene, and that's the opening of the movie.
Yeah. A bunch of the characters are really dumb too, and
yeah.
I didn't like that, because it was like, you know, they knew this woman pretty well. You know, the main character, like, they all, like, the sister knew her really well, her friend that's in the movie knew her really well, and the daughter of her friend that she's really close to knew her very well. And then when she has all these out of left field, like, because basically, I don't want to spoil it too much, but she's being framed for certain things, and it's like, no one's even thinking for a second that, like, there is a possibility that someone's, like, fucking around with her. And I think that's, like, to me, that's just really, really dumb, because, like, it's just such a far leap out of left field for her character to do in, like, one day. And it just seems like, why would she turn into such a, like, sadistic, evil person, crazy person out of nowhere? And I would think at least one person who knew her really well would at least be like, okay, maybe there's a little bit something more to this, but they all just immediately bought the bullshit and they didn't really care to question anything.
Well, granted, like, what she was trying to say and what she was trying to explain to everybody sounded crazy.
I get
like,
it.
if anybody told you what she was trying to say to the other character, you would probably think they're crazy, too.
I get it.
Like, that didn't bother me as much as, a lot of the, like you said, the film was really good at building up suspense, but the payoffs were really weak.
Yeah.
Like the scenes where there was like a lot of violence, you know, I guess you could call it action.
Yeah.
The visual effects were pretty bad because the budget was only $9 million, and I think it really shows because a lot of the visual effects were really bad, and some of the choreography, like the fight choreography, just came off really clunky. I mean, Elizabeth Moss, like, she acted her ass off. She tried to sell it as much as she could, but it was like everything around her was just doing her a disservice.
Yeah, and again, like, I like that the film revolves around an actual important topic, but I just wish that it was done with more finesse, done with more care, and had more of a vision, because this didn't feel like it was. I mean, I guess I don't want to say that it lacked vision, because I feel like there was a vision to it. I guess I just didn't like what they were going for with the story really much, and I didn't like the overall the way that it went, like, just the way that it actually went about things. I feel like if maybe it was directed in a different way, or if the story was written in a different way, it wouldn't have bothered me. But for what it was, for what it was giving me on screen, it just, I don't know, it just didn't do much for me, unfortunately. So,
well, I wonder how much of this is on Lee Whannell's shoulders and how much of this is studio interference, because this is Outhouse Productions. You know, they're notorious for pumping out crap. They've only pumped out maybe like a handful of decent movies since they've been established. And I did see Lee Whannell's other film, Upgrade, and I was actually pretty impressed by that film. And I could see a little bit of his, style in this film, but I wouldn't say I saw too much of his style. Because I feel one thing that really bothered me about this film, and I don't know if this bothered you, I hated the score to this movie. I hated the music so much. Like, it was so overbearing, so obnoxious. Like, we talked about the jump scares in the film, but just looking at the score and the music for the film, like, it was just so overbearing. It wanted to make every scene way more intense than it actually was. And even when the intense scenes were happening, you didn't really feel the tension because of how distracting the score was. It was, God, the music in this film was just god awful.
That's really interesting, because like the score for me, I don't even like remember the score. Like, so for me, it wasn't really the fact that
you don't remember all those bwom bwom noises. It's Jesus Christ, it's like fucking Hans Zimmer on steroids.
To me, it just came off really cliche and just uncreative. Like, it felt like filler music. Filler like score. It didn't seem like the score really had any real vision behind it. One thing that I did think was somewhat good about this film was this, like, the sound design for the most part, because I feel like there was a lot of times where, like, you know, she was going through psychological trauma, and I feel like a lot of the sound editing here and there, like, it was doing a good job at, you know, trying to get the audience immersed into the moment. But I don't know, it just wasn't enough, because, like, even though the sound design was, like, I thought it was effective, it does those really obnoxious loud noise jump scares way too many times for me to give it, like, a bunch of credit, because, like, it really like fucked with the suspense, because it made the payoff just really lacking. Like, it made it to where I was like, I really spent like 10 minutes building suspense just to have a loud noise jump scare that's really obnoxious. It was really aggravating.
Yeah, I will say this film doesn't rely too heavily on jump scares, but it relies on it, like, just enough to where it is aggravating. because I have a pretty like low tolerance when it comes to jump scares.
Yeah, were you gonna say something about someone getting slapped?
Yeah, the sound effects in this film, some of them were especially bad. Like there was a scene where a character gets slapped, and when glasses break and certain things like that, I'm like, this sounds awful. Who did the sound effects for this? This sounds terrible. It's some of the stuff came off like unintentionally funny.
But I mean, like I said, there are some positive things about it. It's just there was quite a bit of stuff that really drove the quality down for me. So like, you know, if I'm gonna give it a grade, I guess I'll give this movie I'll give this a 5 out of 10, and that's me being pretty generous to it. But yeah, 5 out of 10 for me.
Yeah. I had to calm myself down because like when the movie first ended, I was like, this is awful. But then the more I thought about it, it's not awful. It's just a pretty bad movie. Kind of like a more generically bad movie. But I mean, it was better than I was expecting, and I know a lot of people enjoy this movie, and we didn't go into this movie wanting to, you know, shit on it. I'm gonna give this a 4.5 out of 10.
That's fair. Yeah, I mean, I always want to see a good movie, so I always kind of hope for the best.
Right.
Like, I never go in like, oh yeah, I can't wait to come out and just shit all over this movie, because I don't want to shit on movies. Like, I'm actually pretty nice when it comes to movies for the most part. Like, you know, as somebody who, you know, has made short films in the past and am currently making one, like, even with what I have now, like, I know how hard it is to make something that's actually like genuinely effective.
Right.
It takes a lot of patience and a lot of work to try to make something, so I completely understand that. But at the same time, like, you know, I try to be honest, and I definitely try to enjoy films for what they are. But I mean, sometimes you gotta call a spade and just be honest, you know, and just be honest with how the film made you feel. I mean, I wish I really felt something with this film too, because this film I feel like was also trying to be like kind of, I guess kind of emotional at times.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't feel really much emotion throughout this film.
Yeah, going back to when the score got really manipulative,
Yeah.
and sounded like stock emotional movie score. I mean, like, I was hoping like this film would surprise me, seeing as though I like, you know, Lee Wanell as a director. Like, Upgrade, like I said, really surprised me, and it just kind of sucks that his follow-up movie is just, you know, a disappointment.
But yeah, guys, I guess we'll just wrap it up there. That's The Invisible Man for you. So I was hoping for something that was a bit better, you know, because I always hope for the best, but unfortunately I got something that was just a bit below average for me. But if you really enjoyed it, you know, by all means, I'm glad you enjoyed a movie. You know, I don't want anybody to have a bad experience at the movies, because I wouldn't wish that upon myself or anybody. But that's all we got to say about it. If you really enjoyed what we had to say about the film, please give this video a thumbs up and share it amongst your friends. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel to be updated on more film-related content. Peace.